When I saw that Native American actor John McLarnon was in a new series, I was instantly excited to check it out because I really love his acting and his presence on screen. Dark Winds is a new 6-episode dramatic mystery that is coming to AMC Plus and AMC. But does it deliver the goods? Two Navajo police officers in the 1970s Southwest are forced to challenge their own spiritual and personal beliefs when they search for clues in a series of crimes. So this is going to have a bit of a weird release schedule. The first 2 episodes are releasing on June 12th on AMC Plus, with the rest of the episodes coming out one at a time each Sunday after that. But if you're watching on AMC, then only the first episode is dropping on the 12th, making the rest of the episodes 1 week behind what's airing on AMC Plus. Are you following all that? I guess maybe it's to incentivize more subscriptions to AMC Plus. I don't know. I already subscribed to it, so I'm good either way. Anyway, the show opens in 1971 with a heist, and then we follow tribal police as they investigate some other crimes involving members of the Navajo Nation. Now, as I said, John McLarnon stars in this, and I just love his gruff but his sensitive demeanor. He's a tough guy who you don't want to mess with, but he's also got the soft spot that makes him incredibly sympathetic. Now, I really appreciate that this show is predominantly cast with Native American actors, giving a good level of authenticity to the production. And a lot of the time, when they are dialoguing with each other, they speak in their native language, which I also really appreciate. It's like if I'm watching a Spanish show or maybe a Norwegian movie. I expect those actors to also speak in their native language. So it fits really well. Now, there's a tone of mystery within this that surpasses just the crimes themselves. There's lore and mythology that come into play, and I just thought it was awesome. But I do wish that the story would have delved much deeper into that lore, especially when people that are investigating are skeptical, because when I see this certain imagery, I think mystical, supernatural, and it was intriguing. But because of the crimes that are being investigated, in addition to the tribal police, we have the FBI who is called in. And that tension is good because the show doesn't shy away from addressing the feelings of mistrust and betrayal that the Navajo people have just towards the government. Now, this isn't preachy or shoving it down our throats with the messaging, but it all feels organic and right at home in the natural flow of these story arcs. There are only 6 episodes in this first season, with each of them being about 44 minutes. Now, the first episode is a little longer, and the final one is much shorter, which I thought was actually kind of odd. The landscapes are absolutely beautiful in this show, but they're also very desolate and almost intimidating at times. And there are a lot of brown hues and tones that are present, just as much of the scenery is dusty mountains with very little greenery. And the rock and earth formations that just shoot up out of the ground, I thought they're awesome to look at, capturing this raw beauty that adds to the gritty atmosphere of the show. Now, there are times when storms will be shown to be coming in, and in these instances, the special effects aren't all that special. Actually, they're pretty cringy. And there are a couple of other times where other special effects are utilized, and I just found those to be lacking as well. But because this was a TV show, I was a little more forgiving of that shortcoming, especially since they weren't used too often. Now, the story itself is pretty engaging because there are some emotional human dramas that are woven through the criminal cases that are being investigated. Now, I don't think each storyline is given the proper attention to really dive into all of the emotional aspects, but there are a few that are very touching and they hit the right notes when it comes to grief, loss, and even forgiveness. Sometimes it feels like we're just brushing the surface of ideas or maybe conflicts, which in one way makes sense in order to keep the crimes as the central focus, but the issues that are raised are no less interesting and engaging, so it would have been really nice to spend more time on these. For example, there's a ceremony that a young girl is going through. Now, we get to see a lot of what it involves, but we don't dive too heavily into all of the meanings. And I would have loved for the show to take advantage of this opportunity to not only show the culture of these Navajo people, but also to explain it better, to just provide this great understanding for everybody else. There's also a side story having to do with an environmental angle, and it does tie into the main storyline, but the execution feels thin and almost forgotten at times. And we'll pop into it every once in a while, but never spend too much time with it, even though it is a large motivational driver for some of the characters' actions. The aesthetics of the show are wonderfully captured. From the vehicles to the clothing, even to what's playing on television and the decor and furniture within rooms of the homes. All of it screams early 70s. This series has some huge star power behind it when it comes to the production. Both George R.R. Martin and Robert Redford are executive producers. I am curious, though, about their level of involvement within it. Now, because this is releasing episodically, I'm really curious about how the response is going to be to this show. I was lucky enough to get the whole season at a time, so of course I binged it just in order to do this review. But my bigger point is that each of the episodes on their own may not be a big enough draw to pull you in each week. Now, taken as a whole, I really enjoyed the show and even the story because the characters are engaging and I like how the whole mystery fits together. But the individual episodes, they never really ended in a way that left me with bated breath where I couldn't wait to get to the next episode. There's good tension throughout, a lot of the excitement that comes in spurts, and then even the urgency of the final two episodes, it's pretty high. But even with all that, I think you might find it more satisfying to watch the first two episodes, see if you're intrigued by the show, and then revisit it when you can binge the rest in its entirety. I mean, I think at that point it becomes an entertaining and a very tense watch. So overall, Dark Winds is an enjoyable crime drama that pulls in some mystical or supernatural elements while still maintaining a groundedness in reality. The acting is effective with some wonderfully emotional sequences that pull us into the humanity of the characters and then place us within their world. The landscapes and aesthetics of the production are beautiful and feel very authentic. And despite the special effects being lackluster when they're minimally used, the tone of the story and the grit of the tale kept my eyes locked to the screen. I wish more of the story details would have been delved into deeper, especially when it came to lore or traditions, but I still think this is a great way to showcase a culture that hasn't had proper representation before. I'm also thankful that so many Native American actors were able to take part in this rather than having a bunch of white people play their characters, because the authenticity is noticeable in a very huge and great way. I think the biggest obstacle this show will face is the weekly release of episodes that don't end on urgent or tense notes, compelling you to come back week after week. But to miss this altogether would be a shame because it is a fun show to experience. There's a tiny bit of sex, no nudity, a bunch of profanity, and a lot of violence. I give Dark Winds 3.5 out of 5 couches. So what's a little known or maybe a sleeper series that you love that you wish more people knew about? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.